Hey guys, it's Ken here, and today you're listening to the Autism Experience podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Hope you guys have a wonderful new year. I know it's been a while since I've been doing podcasts lately, but now I'm back with a lot of updates, a lot of things to tell you guys. So if you guys want to know more about these updates, stay tuned until the end of this podcast, because today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different, and that is I'm going to be looking at the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This movie from 2013, this comedy slash drama, directed by and starring Ben Stiller, and also starring Kristen Wiig, Adam Scott, who you might know from Parks and Recreation, Step Brother, Patton Oswalt, and Sean Penn. And it's this wonderful movie about a guy who works as a negative assets manager at Life magazine who constantly daydreams as a way to escape from his mediocre life. And he gets this wonderful opportunity of a lifetime to step out of his comfort zone and be this daring and adventurous person he always wanted to be. And so I would say it's a really interesting film, pretty funny, introspective, full of amazing visuals, and it's a treat to watch. And there's a lot I could say about this movie, but it's not why I brought it up. If you guys want to really check this out, I recommend watching the movie, or if you can, Netflix, Hulu, wherever you could find movies, online or DVD or whatever, because I think it's really good. But anyway, why I brought up this movie was because I'm here to talk about the character Walter Mitty, because as an introvert, sort of in a sense related to, my disability, it really connected to me in a way that helped me sort of see things differently in my life. Or it had themes that really spoke about how I live my life, or things that I could relate to. Because although the guy, Walter Mitty, which is played by Ben Stiller, although that guy is not autistic, he does have a certain qualities about him, or a certain aspect of his life, that I feel autistics, and to a larger extent, just introverts and other people could connect with. I'm going to start off by explaining some of the things I feel could make it relatable to autistics, especially introverted types, or even introverts in general. As I'm going to dive into this character, I just want to let you guys know there's going to be a lot of spoilers, so watch out. Unless you don't care, then by all means, let's get started. So, one of the things that I talk about that I feel that autistic, or just people in general, could relate to is the fact that, number one, Walter Mitty is a frequent daydreamer who's unhappy with his own life. Despite having, I guess, a decent job, being a negative assets manager, he's a guy with very few friends. He doesn't really talk much except to his family members and to some of his coworkers, and I guess to the other guy who's working with him in negative assets. He often spends a lot of time alone. He seems to live by itself, from what I gather in the movie. He doesn't travel often. Apparently, the only trip he went on was a trip to Phoenix, Arizona, and that was it. And at the same time, he also wants his life to be grander than everything he's at, because he has an average job, doesn't feel like he's accomplishing much, often spends time by himself, and just not feeling like he's where he wants to be. And which often triggers his daydream episodes, where he imagines himself as doing something super heroic, something admirable, respected, and it often shows out how intelligent and interesting he is, when he's kind of the opposite of that in real life. Such as when he imagines himself at the beginning of the film, where he's a guy who jumps into a burning building to save a dog, and at the same time come up with this leg prosthesis to help that dog walk, because apparently the dog was missing a leg. And all of this because he wants to not only be this idealized version of a person, but also to really attract this person that he has a crush on at work, Cheryl. And so he's thinking, man, if I can only do these things, these super awesome, cool things, perhaps she would notice me. And while it's kind of hopeful for him to really think like that, at the same time, he's kind of afraid to make the first move and to talk to her, because he's afraid of uncertainty and change and not being able to handle these things. And which kind of speaks to how, as people, there's always those things at the back of our mind that we want to try out or do, but we never get the chance to. Oftentimes because we're just too busy, we're afraid of the unknown, or we feel like it would be a waste of time, for us, or that we might deceive ourselves into thinking that it's going to be meaningful to our lives when it actually is not. All these little fears and doubts and external blockers that kind of prevent us from really realizing the things that we want in our lives, which not only comes from, I guess, insecurity, I guess just being disconnected from your dreams or not living the life you want. But in a sense, it kind of speaks to the over influence of pop culture and society on our attitudes towards life. It's almost like as if they have certain implicit expectations that we're supposed to conform to about how we should live our life, how we should be like, and things like that. Because sometimes pop culture and movies often spread these overly dramatic cliches and expectations of what makes a perfect life. And you probably see these cliches like hundreds of times in a lot of romantic movies or even dramas or comedies. Like guy meets girl, nerd type, who's not that popular, kind of meek, and then the popular kid who's cool and pretty and kind of attractive, but really insecure and kind of bossy. People fight, break up, make up, get married, drive into the sunset. All of that cheesy, feel-good kind of stuff that I guess some might really know that it's unrealistic, but we just get addicted to it like sugar. And we just can't help but really be caught up into it and just wish that our life was like a movie. And all of these things can just get us addicted to simply following along with what we think is appropriate for us versus what we actually need in our lives. As one of the things that holds Walter back is that he expects life to follow some sort of movie script where everything is predetermined and expected to happen. Take, for instance, all the random ways in which he can meet Cheryl, where he imagines that he's a sexy Eastern European traveler with poetic words, having this poetry falcon and some hidden sexiness to him. Or like he goes to Cheryl and says, oh, I have a life-threatening disease or something like that. All these things just because he thinks that being that kind of person is what it will take to be able to go on a date with Cheryl. Like this idea of just trying to imagine or just expecting certain situations to unfold a certain way through this pre-planned script that we write in our heads about how we expect things to be. And this is something that some folks on the autism spectrum might experience. And this is something I experienced myself. This idea that before any interaction, I write a script in my head about how I expect things to turn out and what I should say or do to get that outcome. And how I expect that to unfold. And then I assume 100% that it's going to happen exactly the way I write in this little script I write in my head, when in real life it's a lot more complicated than that. And sometimes I just have this obsessive focus on following this script to the point where I ignore the fact that things can happen differently than I expect. And so if anything in real life ends up breaking from what I expect, I end up freezing in place because I didn't plan for that. I'm a guy who likes routines. A guy who doesn't like to think a lot, just follow along with things, and just might end up just cracking and just being frozen and unsure about how to handle it. Which pretty much drives a lot of social anxiety, where we hold these really high or unrealistic standards, and we expect ourselves to really follow that to the letter. No deviation from it. Which constantly puts us in a state of mediocrity or an unwillingness to try out or work hard. I mean, it's true that you gotta have some expectations or some standards to follow and be holding yourselves to when it comes to getting the things you want in your life or how you should live or how you should treat other people. But at the same time, it's important to kind of relax a little because after all, we're only human, You can't expect to be perfect all the time. And we can't expect things to happen to go our way. And that's the beauty of life, just dealing with the chaos of it all. And it's often why I hear a lot of teachers that teach theater who have students, autistic students. Oftentimes, one of the ways they help autistics overcome their adherence to routines and just their adherence to trying to predict everything is to get them to do more improv. Because with improv, it's all spontaneous. You control how improv turns out. You control what jokes you make. You control everything. And it's not scripted. Like someone didn't plan for this improv session. They didn't write a script for you to follow. It's very spontaneous. And it kind of teaches autistics to kind of come out of their comfort zone and to really step into their own power and take control. And requires a lot of thinking on your feet than thinking ahead. So, which I thought was pretty nice and kind of an interesting point to make. With those 2 points I've talked about, There's also another thing too that I find really interesting that I think people might relate to, and that is number 3. Walter often misses out on living in the small moments, and sometimes he fails to appreciate them at times. As a result of his really high expectations on his life, his frequent indulgence in his daydreaming episodes, as well as detached attitude towards his own life, he often misses out on appreciating the small moments then and there in his own life. Because throughout the movie, one of the problems that he has is that he often feels as if life is out of his control, and that he's often wasting time doing things that aren't worthwhile. While failing to see that, in spite of how things turn out, there's some good that comes out of it. Like, for example, one of the key aspects of Walter's life, and I think was the turning point that brought him to where he was at the start of the movie, just kind of going through the motions of life, not really happy where he is, always wishing for something more, was the fact that when how Walter used to be kind of a rebel kid, skateboard guy, sort of into the scene back in his youth, but then after his dad died, he had to give up almost all of his dreams and ambitions just to work at Papa John's in order to support his family. And that moment is what kind of led Walter to feel like a failure for not living up to his potential, oftentimes brushing away from that moment whenever people bring it up, because it reminded him of how he once had that energy and love for living life and living to his fullest potential that he once had as a kid, and how it's just a reminder that he's not living his dream life. And that's kind of a big focal point for Walter. And then later on in the movie, they make a reference to that moment. You know, when in the scene where he goes on this journey to Iceland in search of Sean O'Connell, the photographer of this elusive number 25, this photo that's supposed to represent the quintessence of Life magazine. And on that journey, he ends up finding out where Sean O'Connell is, but he fails to get to him in time. And he also has an impatient boss who's demanding that number 25, you know, immediately, which adds a lot of pressure on him. And in that moment, he feels defeated. So he goes to a Papa John's in Iceland, and he spends about a minute there before leaving. And then after he leaves the Papa John's, after just spending a brief amount of time there, he kind of took that as an opportunity to reflect on himself. And I thought that was kind of nice that they had that low point that he experiences in the movie be at a Papa John's, because it was really nice symbolism of how he's reaching a low point, almost like he's going back to where he started, feeling like a failure who didn't get what he wanted. Much like how he felt when he ended up working at Papa John's to support his family. However, despite the fact that his trip to Iceland, or Greenland and Iceland, subsequently, felt like a failure, he kind of realized, I guess, or in a sense, or maybe he does or doesn't, he did actually do a lot of great things along the way, you know, despite the trip being not what he expected, or maybe a slight disappointment. Like on the trip to Greenland and Iceland, in search of Sean O'Connell, he ended up skateboarding again. You know, skateboarding all the way to the volcano in Iceland, stepping into his own power, you know, being able to skateboard again. Something that he did as a kid, but didn't get much chance to do. Like just learning to live again. He also jumped out of a helicopter into the ocean in order to get on the boat that could take him to Iceland in search of Sean O'Connell. And he also accompanied and, in a way, kind of helped alleviate some of the loneliness of a depressed helicopter pilot that got depressed because of the fallout from cheating on his wife. All these good things that he's done, or amazing things that he done that he didn't notice, because he focused so much on what he didn't achieve, and rather than appreciating the little things that he found along the way. It kind of speaks to how sometimes in our lives, it can be easy for us to focus on trying to get those big wins in our lives, that we fail to see the small wins we get along the way. Because even in failure, there's always something good that comes out of the whole adventure or journey that you go through. And that it's important that we don't get too perfectionist about how we want things to turn out, and just appreciate the little things that come along the way. Just embrace being human and taking in the little moments as they come by. Which kind of leads me to my final point about this movie. And that is about how and why people connect to Walter Mitty. Is that Walter Mitty, throughout the movie, he grows to learn to have a more humble look and perspective on life. Like he learns most importantly, to live in the moment than try to dream about the moment. Experience life as it is, then just try to imagine it. And a good scene in the movie that really helps exemplify all of this, really brings all these ideas together, is when he finally meets Sean O'Connell on the mountain in the Himalayas, and he asks why he's taking a picture of a snow leopard that's passing by them. And Sean O'Connell, this photographer, supposedly famous photographer in the movie, he says that beautiful things don't ask for attention, for they're ghost cats. They don't intend to be seen. And sometimes there are moments where he doesn't take a picture at all, because he just likes to stay in the moment and live in it, and not have the distraction of a camera in the back of his mind, to just enjoy life as it is. And that scene really touched me, because I thought that was a perfect moment that really captured what the movie's all about. Living in the moment instead of dreaming about it. Living for ourselves than for others. Which kind of relates to social media and some of the material things that people could grow attached to with our lives. Because for me, I'm not a big user of social media. Like, I personally don't find the need to spend a lot of hours on it, constantly posting or needing to look at it often. For me, I just like to keep a quiet life for myself. I don't talk a lot, don't have many friends, and I like to spend time alone. And I also don't ask for much gifts either on Christmas time, or I guess on my birthday. Which is kind of weird when you have friends asking what you want for Christmas, and you leave them hanging, and you're like, I don't know. Although just to clarify, this doesn't mean that I'm a bit of a narrow-minded hermit, because I like to hang out once in a while and check social media from time to time. The basic idea is just that I don't have a strong need for socialization, or I don't have a lot of needs or wants, and so on. Because most importantly, I'm a guy who really likes to have genuine conversations with people. For I don't become friends with people right away. I like to get to know people intimately. Get to really explore what drives them as a person, what motivates them. In-depth conversations about the human experience. Because I feel that's how you truly know somebody. By appreciating every side of a person. Even the sides that you don't like to see. Because that's how I feel you truly know somebody. When you see all of that and you just embrace them for who they are. For we're only human. And it's why I like to stay quiet in group conversations. Because I like to hear stories. I like to hear about what motivates people. What drives them. And it opens my mind to possibilities. See beyond walls. To get close to people. And appreciate all the chaotic yet meaningful things on this earth. It helps me get some perspective, some knowledge, and understanding of the world around me. The nature of human existence. You know, all the things that I need for me to grow as a person. You know, just having this very worldly understanding of the world. Because things are more than our 9-to-5 job, a breakup, you know, our little failures. There's a lot more to the world out there, and it's important to have that perspective on it. And realize that our life is more than that. Because right now, I'm currently in a constant state of change. I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly learning more about myself. I'm constantly finding my life's purpose. And I'm constantly trying to understand what I need to do to move forward and grow as a person. Because ideally, I want to grow into a mature adult that can take care of himself, live on his own, have great friends, meet some great people, and have the power to, you know, shape my own life and to live to its fullest. For what I like to do, especially after this pandemic's all over, is I would like to travel, listen to people, meet new people, see things for myself, enjoy the little moments that make up the human experience. As no matter what, as I've kind of alluded to earlier in this podcast, sometimes good things can still come out of embarrassing or bad times. And it's equally relevant to this pandemic because as we're all doing things online and socially distanced, it's kind of important to know that nothing can replace the genuine and spiritual nature that comes with connecting with another human. Like really connecting with them. Not being on your phone or distracted by Instagram or whatever. But really connecting with them. That means talking with them, hugging them, shaking hands with them, spending time with them, quality time, putting your attention on the other person, 100%. As life is short, and so is everyone else's lives. And it's important for each of us to make every moment count. And and really make every moment be something that you would happily remember and embrace. As one of the things that I find problematic in this digital age is not the technology itself, but how we use it. We spend so much time on the internet, just interacting with other people, chatting, texting, all of that stuff, buying things online, reading things online. Almost everything you can think of, we can do online. And while we have the power to do all these things and stay connected to other people, at the same time, we're also lonely. We're connected but lonely at the same time. Because we could look at pictures of other folks might share, and we might feel ashamed that we aren't living as great of a life as theirs. For we might be taking lots of pictures and staying on apps just to show people we're living a good life when we're not feeling good ourselves. Excuse me. All of this to project this image of success and happiness when we actually don't feel that way. Like we're living for the likes and the fame and just getting more followers on Instagram or something like that, instead of just actually living for ourselves, for our spiritual awakening and healing. Because to live for oneself means to take ourselves away from those material distractions and embrace the unknown yet enriching experiences of everyday existence and what it offers you. To sort of put out your hand into the unknown and accept whatever gifts the universe rests upon the palms of your hands, whatever gifts that the universe chooses to anoint upon you. It's those kind of experiences that I feel are somewhat missing in modern life now. Those kind of experiences that makes us feel more connected with each other and kind of reminds us that that we shouldn't be, attaching ourselves too much to the material world. Because while it may make us feel connected and more privileged to do more things, at the same time, the material world could leave us feeling unfulfilled and alone at the same time. And one of the things that I aim to do and strive to do is to have these kind of moments for ourselves, to really live my life and enjoy the world as it is. Because to me, people don't last, but memories do. For it's the memories that touch people in ways money can't. Which means like the things we do for each other, the time we put into hanging out with them, the feelings we express to one another, like love, heartbreak, sadness, joy, happiness, all these things. And those things, I feel, are what truly matter now, more than ever. For they can influence generations after that. Perhaps doing something simple as taking out the trash for an ailing neighbor, or even shaking someone's hand, saying hello to somebody who might be lonely, or going out for a walk yourself. Those actions might seem insignificant to us, but it can mean the world to others. For you may not see it, but it can bring some change into the world. It can, and it will. And all it takes just a little bit of honesty to yourself, and a willingness to bravely step into the unknown and experience all that life offers you. As that's the message of the movie. Experience things. Step into the unknown. Stop dreaming and start living. In other words, it's important to remember to take care of all that matters to you and not hold back. Because life is short and it's important to make the most out of it. With that said, I think Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a really powerful movie that could speak to a lot of people and has a bunch of themes that people could relate to, especially in regards to introversion, social anxiety, and those kinds of themes. And as well as present a lot of life-affirming messages on how we tackle these things and what are some important things to know about life itself. Because overall, it's a really fantastic movie, really good. And if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's worth a watch, and you will not be disappointed, that's for sure. So, with that said, I want to talk to you guys about some updates regarding this podcast, as I promised earlier in the beginning of this podcast. And the first thing is that I want to tell you guys is that I got accepted into CSU East Bay for a master's in statistics. I'm going to go into grad school. I'm starting next week, January the 19th. So I'm going to be really busy with grad school, so I may not be able to devote as much time as I used to this podcast. However, I will still commit to it, just at a very slow pace. So instead of podcasts being a bit more frequent, maybe 2 a month, I'm going to make it more like monthly. So every month you can expect a podcast, as well as some occasional posts from me on Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, do follow me there. I'm at The Autism Experience. You can also find that on my Linktree link in the podcast description, which has all the relevant links you need. Whether you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube or you want to listen to it on Anchor, whatever. Or even go to check out where my social media is. So that's all the updates I really have right now. So do stay tuned, and I hope to see you guys next month, the next podcast. So take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. If you guys like my content, check out and subscribe to my platform, The Autism Experience. Available now on Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube. For social media, you can follow my Instagram account under the handler, The Autism Experience. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more from The Autism Experience.